Please turn, Matthew chapter 4, and those verses that were so wonderfully read. Liz, thank you. Did well. Sorry about this. It's one of those days where, you know, your emotions ride pretty closely to the surface. Matthew chapter 4, and those verses 18 through to 22, but I'm mainly going to focus on one verse. Now, yes, we're in our third month now with Earl and Christine. They're recovering, but it's slow. And so you'll still see us until the end of April. But next Sunday, thank you to Major Allison, will lead Palm Sunday. Major Allison will also lead Good Friday, and we will do Easter Sunday. And then the final Sunday, which is the RSL Church Parade, it's 2 days after Anzac Day, so it'll be a kind of Anzac service. So we're very grateful. The teamwork here at the Core has been amazing. It's just how the Bible envisaged it, pulling together, in a sense, you know, imagine rowers rowing perfectly in unison together. It's in unison. And we're very grateful to Lani and everyone really for doing such a wonderful job at pulling together. So these verses, Matthew chapter 4, as Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, called Peter, and his brother Andrew, casting a net into the sea because they were fishermen. It's an easy story, isn't it? And I think what Jesus then says is probably one of the most profound things you will ever read in the Scriptures, because it impacts your life too. And he said, "Come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." And we can modernise that a little bit. We could say, "And I will make something of your life." And I did a little bit of Googling the Greek word behind this word make, and it has something to do with the construction of something solid. Isn't that amazing? Jesus says, when you follow me, I'll build something into your life that'll stand. It's good. But I love the economy of words in the Scriptures that once they left their nets and followed him. It's good, isn't it? As I said, in my view, one of the most profound verses of the Scriptures. It's repeated in other Gospels and it impacts our lives today. I want to take you back to 2008. There'll be one or two missionary references today. It's Missionary Altar Service Sunday. It was my first ever visit to the village or the town of Kainantu in the Papua New Guinea Highlands. There we have a decent compound. Everything is compounded for safety. We have a core building, run a little school. And there's a guest house and a number of houses where Salvation Army officers live. I was staying in the guest house my first visit. And it was Sunday morning and I was going to be the speaker in the meeting, and I was just standing there and I'm looking out through the window, and it's high, so it's built up, it's a second story level, nothing underneath. And I just noticed from the corner of my eye the Corps officer walked out of the back of his little house. He had no shirt on, but he had his army pants and shoes on. And I'm curious now, and he walked out and he had this big iron bar in his hand. And as he walked, he then disappeared because he was under the house that I was staying in. And the next thing, clang, like this, clang. And what he's doing is obviously beating with his iron bar. They use a gas cylinder or something like that, beating it again and again, maybe 6 times. And it was a bit of a shock to me, and then I noticed he just walked back to his house. But then I noticed, even a long distance away, you could see people responding. It was the sign, the call. It's time for church. The call. You with me here? That's one. So here in the message from the Scriptures today It's like as if Jesus clanging the bell, calling, come, follow me, to be followers of Christ. And so I'm going to ask, it's a good question to ask ourselves today. Have I really answered the call to follow Jesus? Am I still following? I wonder today whether we've ever deeply thought, what does it mean to be a follower of Christ? And when Jesus interrupted the lives of those fishermen that day, his words were not just an invitation but also a promise. Come, follow me, he said, and I will make something of your life. And it seems to me that the promise of Jesus that day to the fishermen was that once they became his followers, he would transform their lives to become just like him, following in his image. That's the bit we don't think about. And when he called those fishermen that day, they were never to go be what they were. He expected them to become like him. They were called not for what they were, but for what they could become. That's worth writing down. And so it begs the question, what does it really mean to follow Christ? In responding with our yes, as the fishermen did, what does it mean for the way we live our lives day by day? And so it seems to me that his invitation to come follow him is an invitation to come be like him. In that Salvation Army Church Hall is this image. They're painted by an Australian, and when you enter halls like this in Papua New Guinea that were built by the Australia Eastern Territory, they're solid, they're permanent, and there's always this similar kind of board at the front. You may not be able to read it, it's in Pidgin, but it's from John chapter 4 verse 19. Jesus, he talk, Jesus said, you, behind him, me. Can you work that out? Follow me. You know. You know. But I think it expresses the verse even more perfectly than the English, because it has this idea when he said to the disciples, I want you to come after me. Be like me. And this word behind him, actually the word in the original translation actually means that, at the back. At the back. Pidgin's good sometimes. And many would profess to be Christian but not actually follow. Does that make... But not actually follow with the way they live. And his invitation to come follow me is an invitation to the promise of a changed life. Come and be like me. Come and let your life be just like mine. And so I'm going to ask today, what can it mean? When Jesus says, come follow me, what can it mean? And guess what? There are 3 today. There's more. These are just samples. And as followers, we're called to be like Christ. And so I want today to touch on 3 distinctive qualities of Christ. Because, you know, a calling on our life, we are not exempted from any quality of Christ. We're not exempted. And sometimes we talk about the fruit of the Spirit and we say, that's okay, but I can never be patient. Anyone here like that? Well, you don't have the fruit. That word's plural. It means all of them. All of them. One fruit. Well, the fruit is plural. So firstly, we're called to follow Christ, and this was in the song, Steve, in compassion. When Jesus calls, "Come, follow me," he calls us to be people of compassion. We're not exempted. It's hard to be a follower of Christ and not desire to be like him in compassion. And it's one of the common descriptions of the nature of God and the very character of Jesus in the Bible. Psalm 51 says, "According to your great compassion." Psalm 145, "He has compassion on all he has made." James 5:11, "The Lord is full of compassion." Matthew chapter 9, "When he saw the crowds, he had compassion." Mark chapter 8, "I have compassion," Jesus says, "on all these people." And when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd in Mark 6, he had... It's the very nature and character of Christ. Come and be like me. Come follow me in compassion. Incidentally, not in the notes, our daughter rang this morning. She was out for a run. She found a young lady completely disoriented on the ground. My daughter had 3 kids at home. My daughter was running the block and keeping an eye on the kids, and she found a woman. And she could have easily run by and said, "I haven't got time for this. You know how you're torn, Mum? The kids are at home." She was doing the lap. Every lap she'd check the kids, but she found a woman in need. And hopefully now there's a woman with help. At the heart of the nature of Jesus was a heart of compassion. And so what about our lives? Have we considered that as followers of Jesus we are called to be people of compassion, called to be like him, called to follow him in his very likeness? St. Paul knew this when he wrote to the Colossians. He said, "We are called to clothe ourselves in compassion." It's everywhere, isn't it? In the scriptures. When he wrote to the Ephesians, he said, "Be compassionate to one another." I mean, as being like Christ to one another. That's what we're called to be. This photo, I have to be quick with these. Again, it was about 2009. I called into Lay, where we're running a little school for street kids. And you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner of the 2 little girls there. I was taken by them and I met them, and the officer there at Lay said they live at Top Town. I said, "Oh, where's Top Town?" Never heard of it. Well, in the middle of Lay is a massive, massive big piece of bush, and it's like a small mountain, hill, thick bush. And there would be something like 20 women, you can see them, live there together in community. They sell their bodies to whoever would pay. They're there with their children, some of whom attended our little school, and I met those 2 girls in the right-hand corner. And so you can see the salvation and the officers in the picture. They just wanted to love these women. And that's the result. Where they're sitting is actually a little chapel that the women built in the bush. The prostitutes of Lay, Top Town. Are you with me here? At the heart of our mission field are hearts of compassion like Jesus. And I can tell you firsthand, these women overwhelmed, not judged. Well, I was there, a car, old battered up ute, drove up. One of the women hopped in the back and drove away. There's no criticism of them, no judgment, but the girls are being taught to make things to earn some money themselves, to make billums. And I've got a gift of one that they gave me at the end. They were raising money to attend the Bible convention. that she wanted to give me her gift, and it was made of all these feathers, and I had to carry it on the plane coming back into the country, and I thought, man, I'm going to be really upset if that bloke at that checks all your incoming, but he seemed to have a blind eye. So I've still got the bill made of feathers at home, made by that woman in the front. When Jesus says, "Come follow me," he invites us to follow him in his compassion. Well, enough said about that. What about number 2? Encourage. When Jesus calls, "Come follow me," he calls us to be people of courage. Because Jesus had courage. If you read John chapter 18, verses 7 and 8, I think this is an amazing experience in the olive grove, in the Kidron Valley, just prior to his crucifixion. It's an amazing insight into the very character of Jesus. And verse 4 of John chapter 18, Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen, this is the reflection forward to the crucifixion. He went out and he asked them. So he was with his disciples, but the guards had come. And Jesus says, "Who is it that you want?" They said, "Jesus of Nazareth." And he said, "I am he." You see this insight into courage? And when Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Such was the forcefulness of his response. It's me. And again, he asked them, "Who is it you want?" Verse 7. "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. Verse 8. "I told you I'm he." "If you're looking for me, then let these men go," to his disciples. It's good, isn't it? Courage. Come, be like me in courage. Are we like Jesus in courage? Here's a photo. Not far from Kainantu, the Salvation Army had little corps, the villages of Bonta and Urara, Eastern Highlands. Tribal fighting again. In that top photo, you can see a photo of Captain Ira Enter, a retired officer. Lived in Urara with her husband, Captain Boa. And men from another village, early morning, attacked Bonta and Urara. And they're firing guns, they're shooting bows and arrows, they're burning houses. And Captain Boa, retired officer, shot in the back, dead. And then they burnt his house. That's the photo of Captain Ira in the ashes. And the officers at Urara, Captain Elias and Patricia, the corps officers of Urara, they took the army flag. And you think, what do we do? Do we run? Do we hide? No, they took the flag and they stood in the middle of the village with the flag. And people running around them with guns and bows and arrows. The officers saw Captain Boa get shot in the back, but they stood with a flag because that's all they thought they should do. Their 4 children laid flat on the ground in the little Salvation Army church made of bush material. Wouldn't stop a rock. And you can see that photo there. I met them a year later. And I said it would be my great honour to stand again with you. You want to talk about courage? That's courage. And this next photo, the DC at Kainantu, what do you do when 2 of the villages are now being burned, where there's a Salvation Army presence? Well, you put a flag on the top of your car and you go out to help. You see this photo? And he's rescuing people to get them out of the fighting, but he had to drive into the fighting. You want to talk about courage? I reckon that's Courage. Taking the character of Jesus seriously. Come follow me. In courage. And number 3, called to follow Christ in consecration, in his consecration. And Jesus showed us this in his character. In John chapter 13, a new command I give you, love one another. And I'm thinking that after today we will never take these words lightly. Love one another. There's no exceptions. Jesus says, a new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By all this men will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. John chapter 13, verse 1. He showed them the full extent of his love. The disciples meeting together in the upper room, they're enjoying meal together, Passover. Jesus gets up from the table, takes his clothes off and puts on the shawl of a servant. We all know this story, but do we? And he took the bowl, and by this time I'm imagining that the disciples' mouths were opening and they're thinking, surely he's not going to wash my feet. Lord, that's what and he put water in the bowl. And he came to the first feet. They're speechless. Do you know whose feet? The denier. The one who was going to hurt him. But he served him. You with me now? If we're going to wash feet, it's a symbol. But we need to find the feet of those who hurt us the most. Then that's love. The character of Christ. He washed the feet of the one who was to deny him. But you wonder who was next, don't you? But let me say Judas. Jesus washes Judas' feet as a servant. I think it's powerful. The betrayer. The one who brought the mob said, that's him. Jesus at his feet, the work of a servant. Jesus said, if you're going to follow me in this way. Who is it in our lives that hurt us the most? He invites us to follow him in his servant nature, his unconditional love, his life of consecration. And in following Christ, we're called to follow in his very nature and the character of his grace and his forgiveness, which will typify our lives also. One last photo. You may or may not remember from the video through the offering. There's a man in a yellow singlet who represented his tribe, and he handed me a gun. Nothing said, no words. He handed me a gun. And you would have noticed in the video that I handed him we handed out 250 Bibles. I love the shot when he puts his arm around me, but he's holding his Bible. His name's Billy. And during the years of fighting, men with guns ran into Billy's house at close range. They shot his wife dead and his 5-year-old daughter. This is Billy. But on the day of reconciliation, Billy led the procession of his people and symbolically surrendered his gun to say no more fighting. And in saying this, his visible presence in leading his people also expressed forgiveness and the chance to begin a new future in the community. Now I show you this photo because Billy, 10 years earlier, I enrolled him as a soldier and his wife of the Salvation Army. Billy is still a candidate for officership. And he and his wife were both candidates. He took seriously the call of Christ upon his life to be just like Christ, to love those who hurt him the most. You see, standing with him on that field were those who shot his wife and daughter. Both he and her name was Wanem. They dedicated their lives to the Lord Jesus Christ and pledged to make the values of the kingdom of God the values by which they would live their own lives. They took seriously Jesus' call, come, follow me, in everything. And Billy lost much. He had much for which to be revengeful. But he showed by example that the forgiveness that was shown by Christ on the cross was also to be the standard by which he lived his life, and also now his tribe. I slept in their village 10 years earlier. And you know what? They remember. 10 years later. So it was good to be able to say, hey, I've left my footprints in the soil of your village when they came together. And just one last photo. I said the other one was last. This is last. And I chose this photo because in a few moments I'm going to invite those who have brought self-denial offerings to come forward and to lay those offerings as an act of consecration at the altar. And this photo for me sums up the typical work of the Salvation Army on the world's mission fields. And the theme for this year's appeal is Hope Revealed. The visible presence of the Salvation Army across all of our mission fields is the visible presence of hope for countless millions whose lives would otherwise be without hope. And this photo that you see was the official opening of the Salvation Army in a remote part of the eastern highlands of Papua New Guinea. It was 2019, a new frontier, pushing the boundaries of the Army's ministry into new and even more remote places. And incidentally, months after, the officer we appointed to this new place, his father, it's terrible, I can't tell you, but his father, the Corps Sergeant Major of a nearby village, was killed savagely in tribal fighting. The officer still serves today. And I'd been driven for many hours. We crossed muddied rivers, negotiated steep, muddy slopes with a vehicle barely able to grip, treacherous mountain tracks until finally we arrived, Habina. This was the site Sunday morning, 70 new Salvationists, all prepared in what it means to be a follower of Christ and to serve him with consecrated lives. And if ever there's a photo that shows what your offerings to the self-denial appeal can do, this is it. Hope is revealed in transformed lives, one at a time, or in typically the mission field, dozens at a time. And so today's our opportunity to reflect the state of our followership. And I finish with this question. Are there areas in our lives where we need the gentle work of the Spirit of God in order to follow in the nature and character of Christ?